Now, we move on. Soldiers at an RAF base have said that their accommodation is in an unlivable condition. GB News can reveal that troops posted to RAF Benson in Oxfordshire are living in squalor amid leaking pipes and rat infestations. Our national reporter Charlie Peters has this exclusive and joins us now in the studio. Charlie, this sounds terrible.
Terrible is a fair word to use. I mean, soldiers I spoke to said that the conditions were slum-like, unlivable. They referred to leaks, pipes bursting in their accommodation, mould and rat infestation on the base. Now, RAF Benson in Oxfordshire is a frontline station. It houses both operational and support squadrons. Puma helicopters are flown out of there. The next generation of pilots and those working in the Air Force are based there. They also have soldiers based there because the military is tri-service and the RAF requires support from the Army. Personnel based there, some of them have told me that their accommodation is substandard. We have several images that they've sent through of those conditions. Now, soldiers sharing this information have to do so on the condition of anonymity because they're not permitted to speak to the press. But with the advent of social media and the possibility to share this information online, so many of these crises and these accommodation scandals have come to light. It's nothing new. Soldiers have been living in pretty much a state of disarray for many decades, but only now is it so obvious. Now, a commission early this year found that the backlog of repairs required would cost some £4 billion to deal with. It comes at a time when many families are being housed in separate accommodation while repairs go on. Many are forced to live in leaking and moulding properties while they wait for those repairs. There was a case earlier this year of a girl being rushed to hospital living in a military accommodation site because of the mould in her house. It is disgusting. It is very poor. And it comes at a time also when the armed forces are slipping slowly below the acceptable level for manning and recruitment. The army is currently sized at 72,000 troops for the active personnel. That's the smallest it's been since the Napoleonic era. Certainly not the number of troops that the army is requiring should it be required to face a sufficient military challenge. So, really concerning footage and testimony coming out of RAF Benson.
They're not getting paid very well either, Charlie, and if they then have to live in substandard accommodation, which you wouldn't inflict on your worst enemy, it's not exactly a great recruiting sergeant, is it?
It is a big problem for recruitment and retention as well. Yeah. Troops turning up, keen, motivated members of the population fighting to serve, keen to serve, but arriving and finding that they're not getting the standards they deserve once they're there. And I think this brings up some conversation as well about double standards, because with this conversation about accommodation, many commentators and analysts in the military space point towards what happens to asylum seekers, illegal migrants. We're spending £8 million a day at least on housing them in hotels. Meanwhile, soldiers are forced to live for many years in this sort of accommodation, partly because, as many troops will say, they know that they will soldier on. They understand that the government can get away with this sort of approach, many analysts tell me, because they know that troops will put up with it, because that's the sort they are. But, as I said, with the advent of social media and how easy it is for people to share this footage online and with journalists, we can reveal the shocking state that many people are left to deal with.
This is appalling, because we've had so many campaign groups saying you can't put asylum seekers and migrants in army bases, it's not fair, it's disgusting, da-da-da-da.
We'll put our troops in there.
But we'll put our troops in there.
Absolutely. Well, in reaction to all of this, I did get a statement from the MOD, and an MOD spokesperson told me that the new government is committed to improving the state of service housing as part of our drive to renew the nation's contract with those who serve. Our government's first King's Speech committed to the creation of a new Armed Forces Commissioner to be a strong, independent champion for service personnel and their families and help improve service life. That's a statement from the MOD. But while all that is said and while all this information comes out, the fact remains that today there are troops at an RAF base living in transit accommodation which is leaking, infested with rats and mould, putting their health and safety at risk.
Don't worry, they've created an Armed Forces Commissioner, another pointless layer of bureaucracy, which will achieve nothing.
Yes.
And at vast expense.
Yeah, exactly. That's the bit, isn't it? More taxpayers' money. Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Absolutely shocking. And you will have your views on that one as well, and it will make you angry. gbnews.com/yoursay. Let us know what you think of Charlie's exclusive report.
Soldiers at an RAF base have said their accommodation is in an unlivable condition. Here are some pictures that we're showing you now. GB News can reveal that troops posted to RAF Benson in Oxfordshire are living in squalor, leaking pipes, rat infestations and the like.
Well, our national reporter, Charlie Peters, has this exclusive and joins us in the studio now. Charlie, looking at some of those pictures, it is astonishing the conditions our troops are living in.
Absolutely, and this is a frontline station, RAF Benson in Oxfordshire. It houses both operational and support squadrons of the RAF, and it's a tri-service station. So the personnel who've spoken to us about this are from the Army, despite being posted at an RAF base. And they have said that this transit accommodation they're living in, so people are passing through this space as well, is severely substandard. Now, soldiers don't have permission to speak to the press, so they've spoken to us on condition of anonymity, but the details they've shown us and shared with us are shocking. Rat infestations, leaks and mould are disturbing to see, especially when you consider who is staying in them, people who should be fighting fit to defend the nation. Are they getting sufficient sleep, rest and recuperation and welfare in such a space? And the bigger question is, just how widespread is this issue? We know that there is a £4 billion backlog of repairs required for the military housing estate. Earlier this year, a girl was rushed to hospital because of an injury she sustained due to the mould in the military accommodation she was staying in. So what's been leaked to us from RAF Benson, perhaps not the best word to use considering those pipes are bursting in their accommodation, is just, I think, a small example of a much wider issue that's been going on in our military housing stock.
And what can they do about it? Do they have, maintenance teams that they call and they're just not getting a decent response on this? Is it just years of neglect, a presumption that they'll just put up with it because they're dutiful people? What is this about?
Well, it's about money, fundamentally, but also, surely, it's about will, because as many analysts have said to us when we've raised this story in the last day or so, there is a double standard here, perhaps, when we know that asylum seekers and people coming over on the channel are very quickly put up into plush hotels when there is insufficient accommodation for them. Soldiers, on the other hand, are dealing with mould and leaks and rat infestations. And on that, I think we're delighted to be joined now by Philip Ingram, a retired military intelligence colonel down the line. And Philip, seeing this footage from RAF Benson and hearing what you've heard about that so-called double standard that I think you raised with me, what's your reaction to seeing that footage from RAF Benson and some of the conditions that our troops are living in?
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I joined the Army in 1984 and have lived in some quite good accommodation in different places, but some appalling accommodation in different officers' messes. Porta cabins in the middle of southern England, where you can see the light coming through between the gap between the roof and the walls. Rats running around, not uncommon. Mice, not uncommon. Mould in bathrooms and elsewhere, not uncommon, unfortunately. And nothing's been done about this. It was highlighted in a Labour Party look at service accommodation whilst they were in opposition last year. But it seems that with the cuts that are coming into government spending this year since they've got into power, that there's going to be even less money available to try and fix some of these issues.
And Philip, you've told me yesterday that this has been a problem for successive governments. Yeah. Do you have confidence that this will now be fixed and with more information coming out about these dire accommodation situations?
I've no confidence whatsoever that it's going to be fixed. The MOD is very good at turning around and saying people are our most important asset. But actually, when you look at the investment that they put into looking after their people, whether it be accommodation, whether it be food, whether it be terms and conditions, every time you look at it, they seem to be being eroded more and more and more. The new Minister for Defence, People and Veterans, Al Kearns, turned around and said that he could justify a 6% rise in accommodation charges because I can speak from my own personal experience of families living in accommodation. That's a good deal. Well, I keep getting reports in my role as a co-founder of the Independent Defence Authority that there are reports of rat infestations, no hot water, no heating, mould, no electricity in accommodation blocks for days. And the Minister of Defence seems to be doing nothing about it. They say their hands are tied with the contracts that were signed many years ago.
Well, thanks, Philip, for your take there. Concerning reports, Tom and Emily. And in reaction to what we've raised, I did get a statement from the MOD, and a spokesperson told me that this new government is committed to improving the state of service housing as part of our drive to renew the nation's contract with those who serve. our government's first King's Speech, committed to the creation of a new Armed Forces Commissioner to be a strong, independent champion for service personnel and their families and help improve service life.
A new commissioner, but perhaps not extra spending. We'll see how that all goes. Charlie, thank you so much for bringing us that story.